Joining us from the Johnson Space Center in Houston, Dr. Mae Jemison, who was among the first astronauts selected after the Challenger accident. She flew as a science mission specialist on a shuttle flight in 1992. And from Durham, North Carolina, Duke University professor Alex Rowland, who spent 8 years as a historian with NASA. Dr. Jemison, let me begin with you because you are in a better position than any of us to talk about the risks involved. But the question is, in light of the Columbia disaster, should NASA put the shuttle program on hold?
The prudent thing to do right now is to put the shuttle program on hold until one understands what went on during the Columbia incident. Because the reality is, until we understand, was it a problem with the tiles? Was it something that came off with the foam? Is it having to do with the APUs? Whatever the issue is, we need to understand that to make sure it's not a problem that's going to occur with every vehicle, that we resolve that problem and figure out any ways to move things forward to make it safe. So yes, it's a prudent move to do right now. However, that doesn't mean that you extend it to say that we don't continue on with human spaceflight.
Professor Rowland, obviously there are many risks involved in human spaceflight. Have the risks become unmanageable now in the wake of the second fatal catastrophe?
No, I don't think they're unmanageable, but I don't think they've been managed very well. I think by the time this investigation's done, we're likely to see that there are the same systemic problems at work now that were at work behind the Challenger accident. That is, we have a shuttle program that is overstressed for being underfunded. They're trying to do too much with the money they have available, and that puts stress on the managers, causes them to make bad decisions. So I think we need to reevaluate the program, surely find out what the specifics of this accident were, but then look for systemic ways to improve the program so it has chances for a better safety record in the future.
Dr. Jemison, is the shuttle still the right vehicle for the job, or is it too old, too big, too unwieldy, as some, including Professor Rowland, have suggested?
I think what we have to do is understand what the shuttle was designed for. The shuttle was designed initially to carry a multitude of a variety of cargo up into space and bring it back down. Initially, it was designed to go to a space station, and then other requirements were levied on it. So in the one hand, for what Professor Rowland is saying about understanding what it is we're doing and NASA's budget being too tight may have some validity, but I don't think that there's a validity so much in the safety as in we have to, as a country, commit to a program and then fund it to that level instead of changing it.
Professor Rowland, as Dr. Jemison just pointed out, the shuttle was in fact designed for a far different mission, to fly far more frequently with great payloads. And the question is, has the shuttle outlived its usefulness?
Well, you would still want to use it for certain kinds of missions. I don't believe we should have a space station, but if you're going to have one, it's appropriate to use the shuttle to carry up some of those large components. It's not appropriate to use it for just crew resupplied to the station where you only have a small number of crew going up, or for the kind of mission we just had. It's like driving a truck to do what a small automobile could do.
Larger question, Dr. Jemison, and this has all been based on the assumption that manned space travel is still necessary. And the question is why? Why do we still need to put men and women in space?
Well, human spaceflight is about extending human presence in the universe. I think that there's a number of ways to look at this. People advocate robotic missions. Robotic missions can only do certain things. They can only do things that you've already thought of in terms of possibilities. Humans have the ability to be much more flexible, where you can change the possible experiments that are done. We see with a different eye. We may notice things that are not noticed on robotic missions. And I think that there's also the very real need to just extend human presence. There is a drive for us to explore. And to set that aside, I think, is not in the best interest of the advancement of mankind, of humanity.
Professor, isn't it cheaper and safer to use cameras and computers and robots?
Of course it is. Anything you can identify to do in space, you can do more efficiently, more effectively, and more safely with machines. Dr. Jemison really offers two rationales for having humans there. One is that we need a human presence in space, but that's having humans in space as an end in itself, which doesn't make any sense to me. Secondly, she says that humans are able to adapt to unexpected circumstances in space. I think that seldom happens in the space program because, as we've seen with the recent shuttle accident, Those humans have to have the proper equipment, the proper information. Their whole mission has to be designed for whatever they're going to do. They have very little flexibility to change that mission once they're launched. In fact, I believe that when you put humans on a spacecraft, you limit its capabilities to do exploration and research, because the primary function of the spacecraft then becomes getting the humans back alive, not conducting the mission.
I actually have to disagree with Professor Rowland, because when you do things like work experimentation with animals, that kind of thing, you do need humans around. The whole idea that a robotic mission's profile can be changed is not true either. Yes, safety is an issue. The very safest flight would not to do it at all. So there is a question about what is it that you're attempting to do. I think some mixture of robotic missions and human missions is what's necessary. To say that humans don't need to go somewhere would be saying, like, to say that we could send a robot to Hawaii and have the same experience, the same evaluation as having sent a human explorer there.
Mr. Rowland, we just have a few seconds left. How much of the drive to put humans in space still, after all these years, is a matter of pure politics, of getting public support and Congress's support?
NASA has always believed, since the Apollo program, that manned spaceflight would be the essential ingredient of any successful space program. They believe that the American public and Congress wouldn't support a program without manned space activity. I think they ought to give it a try. I'm not saying we should get rid of all manned spaceflight, but I think the public would be tolerant of a lot more good space science and a lot less of astronauts floating around tending experiments that don't amount to much.
On that note, thank you very much, Professor Alex Rowland, Dr. Mae Jemison. We appreciate you joining us tonight.